Here is a number worth sitting with. Nearly half. New guidance from the World Health Organization, published on the 15th of July, 2026, states that up to 45% of dementia risk could be prevented or delayed. Not cured after diagnosis. Prevented, or pushed further down the road, by changing things we already know how to change. Today is Wednesday the 29th of July, 2026, and 2 weeks on, that figure is still working its way through health systems, including here in the UK. Now, dementia is not one disease. It is a syndrome, usually driven by neurodegenerative conditions such as Alzheimer's, involving a broad decline in memory, thinking, behavior, language and eventually motor control. It is progressive, and at present it is incurable. The WHO counts tens of millions of people living with dementia globally, with close to 10 million new cases every single year. Against that backdrop, a 45% prevention ceiling is not a footnote. It is the entire story. So what changed? The WHO updated its guidance on reducing the risk of cognitive decline and dementia, and outlets including Health Policy Watch, Open Access Government and RFI carried it within 48 hours. By the 22nd of July, 2026, medical publications such as EMJ were unpacking the detail for clinicians. The core shift is one of emphasis. Earlier guidance treated risk reduction as broadly sensible advice. The updated version treats it as a defined public health target with a quantified ceiling attached. That 45% figure is a population attributable fraction. In plain English, it means that if you removed the identified risk factors from the whole population, you would expect that share of dementia cases to disappear or be delayed. It is a modeled maximum, not a personal guarantee. Nobody is promising you a 45% cut in your own odds. But it does tell you something important. Dementia is far less inevitable than most people assume. The evidence base behind this figure, most notably the Lancet Commission work, points to 14 modifiable risk factors spanning the whole of life. In early life, that means education and cognitive reserve. In midlife, the heavy hitters are hearing loss, raised LDL cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity, excessive alcohol, physical inactivity and traumatic brain injury. In later life, it is smoking, depression, social isolation, diabetes, air pollution, and untreated vision loss. Two of those, high LDL cholesterol and untreated sight loss, were added relatively recently, which is why you are hearing so much about them now. Hearing loss is worth singling out. On the modeling, it accounts for one of the largest single shares of attributable risk, and hearing aids are one of the simplest interventions on the entire list. Time magazine ran a piece on the 21st of July, 2026 focusing on exactly this, the factors you can genuinely change, rather than the ones you cannot. Why now, though? 3 pressures converged. First, the demographic maths. Populations are aging quickly, and because age is the single strongest risk factor for dementia, case numbers are climbing even where age-specific rates are flat or falling. WHO projections have global cases rising sharply toward the middle of this century. Second, the economics. The global cost of dementia already runs well past $1 trillion a year once you count healthcare, social care, and unpaid family care, and unpaid care is a huge share of that. Third, and this is the genuinely new part, the drug landscape shifted. The arrival of disease-modifying antibody treatments for early Alzheimer's changed the conversation, but those therapies are expensive, require specialist infrastructure, PET or spinal fluid confirmation, and careful monitoring for brain swelling and microbleeds. For most health systems worldwide, they are not a mass solution. Prevention, by contrast, scales cheaply. That is the strategic logic underneath this update. Bring this home. In the UK, dementia and Alzheimer's disease have repeatedly been recorded by the Office for National Statistics as a leading cause of death in England and Wales, and charity estimates put the number of people living with dementia here at close to 1 million. Diagnosis remains the choke point. NHS England has long worked to a target of diagnosing around 2/3 of those estimated to have dementia, and performance has sat close to but often below that line, with wide regional variation. That matters practically. Without a diagnosis, families cannot access support, cannot plan finances or care, and cannot be considered for the newer treatments where those are available. What today's guidance adds is a second front. Alongside diagnosing faster, the message is that primary care contacts already happening this week: blood pressure checks, cholesterol reviews, diabetes appointments, hearing referrals, are also dementia prevention appointments. For families, the practical implications land immediately. If you are in your 40s or 50s, the highest value actions are unglamorous and cheap. Get blood pressure measured and treated, with the research literature pointing toward a systolic target around 130 or below from midlife onward. Get cholesterol checked. Take hearing loss seriously and use aids if they are prescribed, rather than leaving them in a drawer. Keep sight tests current. Stay physically active, limit alcohol, do not smoke, and protect your head during sport and cycling. If you are already caring for someone with dementia, none of this is a criticism. Risk reduction is a population strategy, not a verdict on any individual case. Plenty of people do everything right and still develop dementia because age and genetics remain powerful. The honest framing is about shifting the odds and buying time, not eliminating risk. Looking at the near term, expect three things. First, national guidance bodies will now begin translating the WHO framework into local pathways, which in the UK typically means NICE and NHS England reviewing how risk factor management is coded and incentivized in primary care. That process takes months, not weeks. Second, expect more attention on hearing and vision services, because those are the two additions with the clearest, cheapest interventions attached, and because waiting lists for audiology and ophthalmology are already under strain. Third, expect scrutiny of the inequality angle. Modifiable risk factors cluster heavily in lower-income populations, so a prevention-led strategy could either narrow the gap or widen it, depending entirely on who actually gets the checks. Watch the autumn health planning cycle for whether prevention targets come with funding attached. Without that, a 45% ceiling stays a statistic rather than a result. So here is what to hold onto from the 29th of July, 2026. The WHO is not claiming dementia is a lifestyle choice, and it is not claiming a cure. It is saying that up to 45% of the global burden traces back to factors that are, in principle, changeable, and that most of those changes are ordinary primary care and public health measures rather than exotic medicine. Hearing, blood pressure, cholesterol, vision, activity, alcohol, smoking, diabetes, social connection, air quality. The list is not mysterious. What is genuinely new is that a global health authority has now put a number on the opportunity and told health systems to treat it as a target. If you take one action after this video, book the check you have been putting off. That is the entire guidance, compressed. Thanks for watching, and do subscribe for clear, sourced health explainers.